Sometimes it's okay to break the rules, right? Welcome back to the Band Guide. I'm your band guy, Colin, and today, in honor of the release of my band Broke Royal's brand new single, Big Dream, I want to take you behind the scenes of the mix I just did for that and share with you 3 times that I broke the rules when it comes to mixing. And my hope with this video is that by showing you what the rules are and how I broke them, you can understand how maybe some of these things might be holding your mixes back if you don't realize there are these kind of rules to the way we should be mixing, and how you can overcome them if you do want to break them so your mix doesn't sound unprofessional and weird. There are some things in mixing that if you don't realize are going on, you can have kind of a weird feeling sounding mix. And my hope with this is that I'm going to give you a encouragement and opportunity to break free of these rules by understanding them a little bit better and then going forward doing whatever the heck you want. Okay, let's get into it. So the first thing that I did, the first rule that I broke is that I panned my bass guitar. This is a big one because typically you want your low end up the middle. Low end in a mix is the highest energy element. There's the most energy in the low end. And so if you pan your bass guitar off to one side, the energy in that ear is going to feel uneven. It's going to make your mix feel like it's leaning almost no matter what else you do, because even if you get the volumes balanced, the low end just has so much more energy. And so you typically want to keep your low end center because that's where you're going to have the most balance and the most power from that low end. And so we want to keep our bass center, but you don't always want to keep your bass guitar center. So how can we work around this? Well, if you saw last week's video, you've already seen a little sneak peek of this, but let me show you what I did here. So this is our bass guitar or bass guitar tracks here. And starting in this verse, I wanted to have the bass come in really strong in the left ear. So I'm just going to play about 40 seconds of the song for you so you can hear how this bass sits in this mix. Check it out.
Big dream has got you right where they want you. Big dream has got the money to haunt you. Big dream has got the votes that they need. Big dream has got the rights to the seats. They're cutting corners, yeah, it's getting obscene. They're cutting corners, they're not playing it clean. Big dream, baby, big dream. Big dream, baby, big. Tell me it's real, baby, I'll believe you. Tell me this here's and I'll never leave you. I'll never leave you. Tell me it's real and I'm on your team. Tell me this here's, it's a big dream. It's a big dream. Come on, I dream, baby, dream.
It's kind of cool, right? I love that part of that song. And this is something, honestly, that I'd originally thought I was going to do when I actually did the first mix. I sent it off to the guys in the band, and the singer came back and was like, man, I was really thinking you'd pan the bass in the song. And I was like, well, you can't do that because you got to have the low and center. And then I was like, wait, you were already thinking about doing that. Just do it, right? So it's the first rule that I'm breaking in this song, and I really think it sets the tone for this song being kind of a different feeling mix. Now, to do this, if you want to keep your low end center but pan your bass guitar, you need to split them into separate tracks. There's other more complicated ways that you can do this, but splitting into separate tracks is the most clear-cut way. It's the way I always encourage you to work simply and easy and clear. So just splitting your tracks. And we do that very simply by, with one bass, cutting out the super low end. So this is our high end bass, if you will. This is the fuzz. And I've just cut out all the low end. And then we've created a subtrack that we're keeping in the center. And that's this track here. Go ahead and turn that off latch so I don't throw anything off here. And this bass track here is just the sub low end. Let's solo that. So even though that bass guitar sounds like it's in our left ear because all the high-end information, mid-range and high-end information is off in one ear, the low end is staying center because I have that track panned center. So it's kind of a bit of a cheat, but it allows you to get the effect that you want of the bass being off to one side while keeping the energy of the low end in the center. So that's the first rule that I broke when I was mixing this song. I really like the way that it came out. Now, a couple of tricks to make this work, or a couple of keys to make this work, is that you need to balance it with something else. So in this case, I'm balancing this main bass fuzz track with my guitars. My guitars are leaning right in this section of the song. So if we listen to, let's just solo actually all of our basses here. We have our bass that has some in the center, but then the main bass off to the left here. If we look at our balance meter up here, we can see that it's leaning off to the left. You can also see that down on this bass track. And then I'm using the guitars that are leaning off to the right to balance it out. So the balance between the two feels very even. We can actually see that up here with this meter. The top being the left, bottom being the right. They pitter-patter back and forth a little bit, but generally speaking, they're hitting around the same volumes. That's indicating to us that it is nice and balanced. So anytime you're doing anything crazy with painting, you generally want to keep it balanced. And so if you're painting something off to the left, you should be thinking about what you might want to paint off to the right. The exception of that, in this case as well, breaking the rules again, kind of, is that the intro doesn't have a consistent bass line or a guitar line. Like this bass is really driving, but the guitars are just kind of coming in every once in a while. And so I'm actually letting there be a bit of a tension in that intro section. So if you want to have it leaning off to one side for part of the mix, that's fine, as long as you let it resolve in a way that feels satisfying, at least in most songs. In general, you want to play with tension and release. That's one way that you keep your listeners engaged, right? So it's a little bit, it's like, oh, that's leaning a little bit. And then in a second, when this chorus comes in, and the guitar bounces off in the right ear, it feels balanced and satisfying, right? It's a release to the tension that we just built up by having the bass lean off into one ear. So that is the first rule that I broke, was that I panned my bass guitar. Again, cheating it a little bit by having the sub separated and then balancing that bass guitar being panned to one side by having the guitar panned to the other side. The second rule that I broke is that I have 3 completely different drum kits in this song. And these range from being kind of normal drum kits to being completely wild, weird drum kits. So the main drums in the song are a digital drum kit, and that's just a set of samples that the singer put together for the song. And this is the main drum sound, and it runs throughout the whole song. And it's a really cool sound, and initially this is all we were going to have. But then we sent off, and a guitarist, Benji, was like, I want to put some drums on it. And so he added the worst sounding drums you've ever heard. I'm calling this a trash kit. And he didn't play the kick drum, which was intentional here because he didn't know the exact kick drum rhythm. So he was able to keep basically like a cymbal, snare, and some tom hits on his track while leaving the kick drum out so that there weren't like flaming kick rhythms. I think that's important here. So that's his sound, and I made it even worse. He kind of did some crazy stuff processing to get that initial sound, but then I added an additional reverb sound every time he hit the snare, and then I also took his snare sound and sampled it and created a snare sample that really highlights kind of the ring that's going on with that. It's kind of a nasty sounding snare, so you put it all together and you get this cool kind of gross drum sound. And then I wanted a little bit more body brought in as well. Like obviously that's a very high pitched, tinny, harsh feel. But I wanted a third drum kit to come in that was going to balance it out. And so I call this live drums, but these are really Logic drums. And this is just a Logic producer kit. And all I did is I took the kick drum rhythm from the electric drums so that it would always perfectly match up with what the electric drums are doing. And then I took the snare drum from what the trash kit is doing, and I used that to create this pattern here. And I found some samples that are really nice and thick and chunky, if you will. And I blended them together. And in the end, we get these 3 drum sounds that sound kind of wild. You take away any one of them and it just doesn't feel the same. You take away the Logic kit, very thin, fills it back out. Take away that trash kit, and it feels just kind of normal, right? So really cool, really interesting effect. Now, layering drums like this is not a completely new thing, and it's by no means a rule, but I find that it's kind of a rule that we tend to put ourselves in. Like, this is my drum sound. I've gotten these, like I've picked this one Logic drum kit, I'm just gonna use it. But why not try maybe recording that drum? The trash kit is one mic across the room. He didn't even really spend a lot of time on it, and then he compressed it and EQ'd it and made it sound really crazy, distorted it. And so you could try layering in a live, poorly recorded drum sound into your Logic kit to give it a little more life and energy. Or you could add an electronic drum kit to give it kind of that extra low end. This is something I've taught on this channel before, which is that you can use like a 808 or just a super low end kick drum to add a bunch of sub energy to your kick drum sound. So these 3 drum sounds are a huge part of the actual drum sound, and they all come together to give you this nice big full drum sound. And I particularly like them in this post chorus right here. Cool. Okay, so that is the second rule that I broke. And the third and final rule that I broke is that I actually pan the drums. Now, this is something that can really get weird if you're not super careful, super intentional, and not clear on the vision that you have with this. But I'm not talking about panning like one tom off to the side and the other tom off to the other side. I'm saying I panned these entire drum kits. So they start out where they're all up at the middle and they're kind of reinforcing one drum sound. But then at the end, I wanted the song to go crazy. So at the beginning, the song kind of starts by being a little bit crazy by having the bass panned, and then that kind of resolves and the bass ends up in the center for a little while. And then in the end, I wanted the song to open up and just feel really raucous and weird. And so in this bridge here, I have the drums start to pan. So the Logic drums I just did on this main pan knob here, and on the trash kit, I did it inside on some of the individual elements. And so they go from being center to being panned off to the side. Now, a quick note, if you're working in Logic, you have access to balance panning versus if you click on this one, I've selected stereo pan. If you're panning something that's a stereo track and you want to pan all the way off to one side, then you want to use stereo pan, because otherwise the balance pan is actually just going to be turning down the left ear. If you were going to pan it all the way to the right, for example, that was probably opposite for you because of the camera. But if you are using balance pan, it's just turning down the volume of one side or the other. Stereo pan will keep that whole sound and just move it all over to one side. So quick note, important. Okay, so the way that I've done this, now the Logic drums flip off to the left, the trash kit flips off to the right, and the electronic drums stay up the center. And when we get to this chorus, you end up with this kind of wild drum sound compared to the chorus before where they're all together. Kind of contained feeling. This is just wild at the end, right? And it feels really weird, but we can see here, it's still mostly balanced if you look at this meter or our stereo output here. And that was a big key to this, is that I'm making sure as I'm setting my levels that the balance is fairly on. Now, I wanted to draw a little attention to that trash kit, so I'm letting it lean a little bit louder in the right ear, but generally speaking, it's pretty balanced. So check this out as this bridge opens up and it goes into that section. It's really cool, at least in my opinion. Kind of cool, right? And I want to show you one more thing. Those are the big three rules that I broke in this song, but there's one more thing that I want to show you that you heard right there at the end, and that's that I pulled in sounds for this song from a completely other song that I didn't even record. It's one that I had permission to pull from, and so if you can't pull in samples from other songs without permission, but it was one of the Band Guide students. I did a mix critique for him. Shout out to Dr. Poodlehead if you're watching. And he sent me this really, really great song that had people talking in the bridge, and I really loved it. And I was working on this song at the time. I just thought, I wanted to have something like this in this song, but I didn't have audio and I hadn't set up all the people to record it the way that it would need to be. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if that just worked in this song? So I pulled in his talking, and it's just a few different tracks. So the way I use it, I panned one off to the left, one off to the right, and just kept one center. And it's just a cool group talking, and it adds so much to this section here. So I use it a couple other times throughout. It's just a cool, fun, little different kind of thing that you can do. The talking is part of the trick. The second thing is don't be afraid to pull in things from other songs and see if they work in their song. I know famously the 1975 actually pulled the same, I think it's a saxophone part from one song into 2 or 3 other songs on the same album. And that seems weird, but it was in the same key or a complementary key, and it just gave these songs kind of a cohesion. And then also it was just something that they thought they would try, and if it worked, it would be great. And if not, it would give them an idea of what they might do instead. So don't be afraid of pulling things into your songs. Also, don't be afraid of adding some fun, just like nonsense talking like this in your songs, because it can give it a really cool energy. And yeah, that's just a few people around a microphone, like kind of talking and having a good time. And they chopped it up and used it in the song. And then I chopped that up and used it in my song. So don't be afraid to try crazy things like that. Hopefully this video is kind of inspiring to you to break the rules, give you some of that understanding around what those rules are. And then also just some permission, if you will, to break the rules. Have a little bit of fun with it. Go crazy and do things that you might not typically do in your recordings, in your mixes. Before you go, I want to ask 2 things of you. First of all, please go stream the song Big Dream by Broke Royals. I think you'll really enjoy it. I'm really proud of it. There's a link in the description below where you can check it out. The second is, if you're struggling to get a mix that you're proud of, I want to give you a gift. I've put together a 6-step checklist that just walks through the 6 steps that all professional mixes have and how you can do them wherever it is that you're making music. And it's completely free from the description below. It's the same process I follow for every song that I mix, so I know it's going to help you out. It's already helped out thousands of people, and it's completely free. So grab it from the link in the description below. It's really going to help you out. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these rules are you going to try breaking at some point in the future? Let me know in the comments. If this video was helpful, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next week with another video.